Picture two rooms separated by a single wall, each containing a man bent over his work, each believing he stands on the threshold of transformation. In the first room, the alchemist stirs a bubbling cauldron with desperate intensity, throwing in fragments of lead, drops of mercury, whispered prayers, and the crystallized essence of his hope, waiting for the miraculous moment when base metal transmutes into gold. He has no formula, only faith in the mysterious and the unknowable. And so he prays harder, stirs faster, and occasionally, catastrophically, watches his laboratory explode in failure. In the second room sits the chemist, calm and methodical, who writes a simple equation on his board: H2 plus O draws H2O. And when he combines 2 parts hydrogen with 1 part oxygen, water appears, not sometimes, not hopefully, but every single time, because he follows a law that cannot be broken. Now consider this stark truth that most people spend their entire lives refusing to see. You have been treating the acquisition of wealth like the alchemist treats his cauldron, throwing in random efforts, sporadic visualizations, inconsistent actions, and desperate hope. When Wallace Wattles discovered over a century ago that getting rich operates exactly like the chemist's formula, precise, predictable, and utterly guaranteed when you follow the exact sequence of mental operations he laid bare. The moment you place your faith in hope, you have already admitted a devastating truth about your relationship with wealth. You do not know what causes it. Hope is the language of the powerless, the vocabulary of those who have surrendered their agency to the whims of chance, circumstance, and the mysterious favor of forces they cannot name or control. When you say, "I hope I get rich," you are confessing that you believe prosperity might strike you like lightning strikes a tree, randomly, unpredictably, and only if the universe feels generous that particular day. But Wallace Wattles, in his revolutionary work, The Science of Getting Rich, demolished this paradigm with a single earth-shattering declaration: there is a science of getting rich, and it is an exact science, like algebra or arithmetic. Read those words again, and let their implications detonate in your consciousness, because if wealth operates according to scientific law, if it follows the same unchanging principles as mathematics, then poverty is not a curse, failure is not fate, and your current financial condition is not a reflection of your worth, but merely the inevitable output of a formula you have been running incorrectly. The word science in Wattles' title is not metaphorical decoration or motivational hyperbole. It is a precise technical term that carries the full weight of its meaning. Science is the study of that which operates according to law, of that which produces the same results under the same conditions, of that which can be tested, verified, and replicated by anyone who applies the method correctly. When Wattles says getting rich is a science, he's making the boldest claim possible, that there exists a specific sequence of mental and physical operations which, when performed with precision, must produce wealth in your life with the same certainty that striking a match in the presence of oxygen must produce flame. This is not positive thinking dressed in scientific language. This is the exposure of an actual causative formula that has been hidden in plain sight, waiting for those courageous enough to trade their comfortable relationship with hope for the demanding precision of law. What makes this revelation so powerful and so threatening to your existing worldview is that it strips away every excuse you have carefully constructed to explain why you are not yet wealthy. If wealth is governed by law, then your current lack of wealth is not the result of bad luck, poor timing, insufficient connections, or the economy's refusal to cooperate. It is the mathematical consequence of running a broken formula, of missing variables, of imprecise measurements in the laboratory of your own mind. The chemist whose water fails to appear does not blame the hydrogen or curse the oxygen. He checks his proportions, verifies his procedure, and corrects his method. From this moment forward, you must approach your financial life with the same rigorous accountability. In the next period of your attention, we are going to perform an operation that most personal development content carefully avoids because it is too precise, too demanding, and too unforgiving of casual application. We are going to remove the guesswork from manifestation. You have been taught to visualize, to affirm, to believe, and to take inspired action. But you have never been given the exact formula, the specific sequence, the precise proportions, the non-negotiable conditions under which the law must produce your desired result. Wallace Wattles called this the certain way, and the reason this teaching has remained relatively obscure, despite its revolutionary power, is that it requires you to abandon the comfortable ambiguity of spiritual gambling and embrace the rigorous precision of mental chemistry. This video will break down what we are calling the precision secret, the exact mental formula that transforms the manifestation of money from a game of chance into a guaranteed outcome. You will learn the 3 variables that must be present simultaneously and at full intensity for the formula to run. You will discover why most people fail, not because the law doesn't work, but because they are attempting to operate it with missing components, like trying to bake bread while leaving out the yeast and wondering why the dough refuses to rise. You will understand how to audit your own mental formula daily, checking each variable with the same care. A pilot checks his instruments before takeoff, because a 95% correct formula produces 0% results. Precision is not optional, it is the entire point. But here is what makes this teaching different from every other discussion of manifestation you have encountered. Wattles does not ask you to believe him. He does not appeal to your faith in ancient wisdom, or your hope that this time finally the method will work. He makes you a simple, verifiable offer. Perform these operations exactly as specified, with the precision a chemist brings to his experiments, and watch the law produce wealth in your life with the same inevitability that the law produces water when hydrogen meets oxygen. This is not inspiration. This is instruction. This is not motivation. This is mathematics. And if you are ready to trade the emotional comfort of hoping for riches for the intellectual rigor of causing them, then you are ready to enter the laboratory where Wallace Wattles awaits, not as a guru to be worshipped, but as a master chemist revealing the formula you have been seeking your entire life. The entire edifice of Wallace Wattles' teaching rests on a single foundation stone, and if you reject this premise, everything that follows will appear to be fantasy, wishful thinking, or the naive optimism of a man who lived in simpler times and could not foresee the complexities of modern economic reality. But if you accept this premise, if you allow it to restructure your understanding of how wealth operates, then you gain access to a technology more powerful than any innovation in finance, more reliable than any investment strategy, and more accessible than any opportunity that requires capital, credentials, or connections. The premise is this: the universe in which you live is governed by law, not chaos, and wealth is the inevitable result of doing things in a certain way, while poverty is the mathematical consequence of not doing them that way. This is not a religious belief requiring blind faith. This is an observable pattern that anyone can verify by examining the lives of those who have accumulated wealth across every culture, every economy, and every historical period. When Wattles declares that if a man gets rich, it is because he did things in a certain way, he is not making a moral judgment about worthiness or a spiritual claim about karma. He is stating a principle as impersonal as gravity. The stone that falls to earth does not fall because it is bad or because the universe is punishing it. It falls because it is obeying the law of gravity, and that law operates with complete indifference to the stone's desires, beliefs, or moral character. In the same way, the person who becomes wealthy is not rewarded by a benevolent cosmos for being deserving. He becomes wealthy because he has aligned his thoughts and actions with the laws that govern the production of wealth, whether he understands those laws consciously or obeys them instinctively. This distinction is crucial because it means that wealth is not a gift to be received or a blessing to be granted. It is an effect to be caused through precise adherence to causative principles. Look around you and observe the devastating consequences of believing that wealth is distributed randomly or according to factors beyond your control. The person who believes success depends primarily on luck becomes passive, waiting for his fortunate break, while years dissolve into decades of unrealized potential. The person who believes wealth flows only to those with connections becomes bitter, spending his energy resenting those who have what he lacks, rather than studying what they did to acquire it. The person who believes the economy must cooperate, that timing must be perfect, that circumstances must align before prosperity becomes possible, has unconsciously placed his financial destiny in the hands of forces he cannot influence, and so he remains forever at the mercy of conditions he has declared himself powerless to change. Each of these beliefs, though widely held and socially acceptable, represents a fundamental rejection of Wattles's premise. They are all variations of the claim that the universe does not operate according to law, that results can appear without adequate causes, that chaos rather than order governs the distribution of resources. But the person who accepts Wattles' premise, who truly grasps that wealth is the predictable output of specific inputs, undergoes an immediate and irreversible shift in orientation. He stops scanning the environment for lucky breaks and starts examining successful people for patterns of thought and action he can replicate. He stops complaining about circumstances and starts asking what causes are being set in motion or neglected in his current approach. He stops waiting for the perfect moment and starts creating the perfect method, understanding that the right method applied at the wrong time will still produce results, while the wrong method applied at the right time will still produce failure. This shift from passive hoping to active causing represents the difference between the gambler and the scientist, between the victim and the architect, between those who wish for wealth and those who engineer it. Consider the profound implications of the phrase certain way, not a possible way or one of many ways, but the certain way, suggesting a specific formula that works independent of personality, education, or starting capital. This is what makes Wattles' teaching simultaneously threatening and liberating. Threatening because it removes every excuse for continued poverty, liberating because it places the power to create wealth entirely within your control. You cannot control the economy, but you can control your mental image. You cannot control other people's decisions, but you can control your own purpose. You cannot control timing, but you can control your faith in the law's operation. The certain way is certain precisely because it does not depend on variables outside your jurisdiction. It operates entirely within the laboratory of your own consciousness, where you have complete authority. The universe, in Wattles's framework, is not a personality that rewards good people and punishes bad people, nor is it a random generator producing arbitrary outcomes. It is a system that responds to inputs with outputs, causes with effects, formulas with results. When you plant an apple seed in fertile soil, water it consistently, and provide adequate sunlight, you do not receive oranges or roses or random vegetation. You receive an apple tree, because the law governing plant growth is precise, predictable, and utterly indifferent to your preferences. The same principle governs wealth. When you hold a clear mental image, maintain unwavering purpose, and sustain absolute faith in the law's operation, you do not receive random results or disappointing surprises. You receive the materialization of what you have been thinking in the certain way. Because the law governing manifestation is equally precise, equally predictable, and equally indifferent to your history, your circumstances, or your current bank balance. Yet here is where most people stumble, even those who claim to accept the premise of law. They accept it intellectually while rejecting it practically. They agree in theory that the universe operates according to principle, but they continue to act as though wealth requires luck, as though success demands special favors, as though prosperity is a limited resource available only to the fortunate few. This contradiction between stated belief and actual behavior reveals that they have not truly absorbed Wattles' premise at the cellular level. They have not allowed it to restructure their fundamental relationship with money, with possibility, with their own power to cause effects in the material world. The real work of this teaching is not learning new information, but unlearning the deep conditioning that taught you to treat wealth as mysterious rather than methodical. Wattles goes further, making a claim so bold that most readers skip past it without grasping its revolutionary implications. If he stays poor, it is because he did not do things in the certain way. Read that again. He does not say, if he stays poor, it might be because he failed to apply the method. He does not say, if he stays poor, perhaps external circumstances prevented the method from working. He says directly, without qualification or escape clause, that continued poverty is always, not sometimes, not usually, but always, the result of not doing things in the certain way. This statement will either radicalize your approach to wealth or offend your need to maintain poverty as an acceptable outcome that results from factors beyond your control. There is no middle ground, no comfortable compromise between these two worldviews. The person who fully accepts that poverty is always the result of a broken formula can no longer afford the luxury of blaming circumstances, because he has recognized that circumstances are themselves the materialization of previous thoughts held in previous minds. Your current environment is not the cause of your poverty, but the effect of your past mental operations. This recognition is devastating to the ego, but empowering to the will, because it means that changing your financial reality requires not changing your circumstances, but changing the formula you are running in your mind. You do not need a better economy. You need a better method. You do not need more opportunities. You need more precision in applying the law. You do not need luck to shift in your favor. You need to stop operating as though luck exists and start operating as though law governs all outcomes. The universe, according to this framework, plays no favorites. It does not care whether you went to Harvard or dropped out of high school, whether you were born into wealth or born into poverty, whether you are 30 years old or 70 years old. It responds exclusively to the formula you are running, and the formula works for anyone who runs it correctly, with the same certainty that fire burns anyone who touches it, regardless of their biography. This is what makes the science of getting rich genuinely scientific rather than simply spiritual. It removes the personal from the equation, treating wealth as an impersonal result of impersonal causes, accessible to anyone willing to learn and apply the formula with precision. But notice what Wattles does not say. He does not say that the certain way is easy, comfortable, or immediately intuitive. He says it is certain, meaning it works, not that it feels natural to minds trained in randomness. The difficulty most people encounter is not that the law fails to operate, but that they fail to operate the law correctly, consistently, and completely. They visualize for 3 days, lose faith on the 4th, and then declare that visualization doesn't work. They hold a clear image in the morning, forget it entirely by afternoon, and wonder why results fail to materialize. They maintain purpose for a week, abandon it when immediate results don't appear, and conclude that the method is flawed, rather than recognizing that their application was incomplete. The law does not work sometimes. Your application is inconsistent. What Wattles is offering you is not a new belief system to adopt on top of your existing beliefs about money. He is offering you a complete replacement framework that, if genuinely accepted, will demolish every excuse, every complaint, and every justification for continued poverty you have been unconsciously protecting. The person who truly accepts that the universe is governed by law and that wealth results from doing things in a certain way can no longer say, "I can't get rich because of X," without admitting, "I have not yet applied the formula correctly." This level of accountability is unbearable to most people, which is why they prefer the comfortable mythology of luck and circumstances, not because it serves them better, but because it demands less precision. The foundation then is not positive thinking or spiritual belief, but a recognition of the mathematical nature of manifestation. Specific causes produce specific effects, and if you want a specific effect, wealth, you must engineer the specific cause, thinking in the certain way, with the precision a chemist brings to combining elements. The universe does not reward hope. It responds to law. It does not grant wishes. It reflects formulas. And if you are ready to trade the gambler's relationship with money for the scientist's relationship with money, then you are ready to learn the variables of the formula that Wattles spent his life perfecting. The formula Wallace Wattles discovered is not a vague collection of spiritual principles or a loose assembly of motivational techniques that you can apply casually when inspiration strikes. It is a precise equation with 3 non-negotiable variables, and like any equation, it produces results only when all variables are present at the correct values simultaneously. Remove one variable, and the formula collapses into uselessness. Reduce one variable below the required intensity, and the formula produces no result, regardless of how perfectly you execute the other 2. This is what distinguishes genuine science from spiritual wishful thinking. Science demands precision, while wishful thinking accepts approximation. And what you are about to learn is that most people who claim manifestation doesn't work have never actually run the complete formula. They have been attempting to produce water while leaving out the hydrogen, then blaming chemistry when the result disappoints them. The first variable is what Wattles calls a clear mental image, and you must understand this is not merely a suggestion to think positive thoughts about money or visualize abundance. It is a specific technical operation that requires you to construct in your mind a detailed, precise, sensory-rich picture of exactly what you want, held with such clarity that you could describe it to another person down to the smallest detail. This image functions as the mold into which formless substance pours itself, and if your mold is vague, ambiguous, or constantly shifting, the substance cannot take form around it. Think of it this way. If you commissioned a sculptor to create a statue, but gave him no specifications, no model, no description of what you wanted, he would stand paralyzed before the marble, unable to begin, because he has no image to guide his chisel. Your clear mental image is the blueprint that guides the creative forces of the universe in shaping your circumstances, and a 90% clear image is not 90% effective. It is 0% effective because the law requires precision or produces nothing. The second variable is fixed purpose, and here is where most people sabotage their own formula without realizing it. Purpose is not the same as desire, preference, or casual interest. It is the unwavering commitment to actualize your mental image regardless of obstacles, setbacks, or the temporary evidence of your senses. Fixed purpose means you have decided, at the deepest level of your being, that the thing you have imaged must manifest, and this decision is not subject to negotiation, revision, or abandonment based on how you feel from moment to moment. If your mental image is the destination entered into a GPS, your fixed purpose is the commitment to keep driving toward that destination regardless of detours, traffic, or weather conditions. Without this variable, you are not commanding the universe to produce results. You are merely suggesting possible outcomes that you might find acceptable if they happen to appear without too much effort on your part. The third variable is unwavering faith, and this is where the formula makes its most rigorous demand on your consciousness. Faith, in Wattles' framework, is not religious belief in an unseen deity or optimistic hope that things might work out. It is absolute certainty in the law's operation. The same certainty you have that released objects fall downward rather than upward. When you release a pen and watch it fall, you do not hope it will fall or believe it might fall. You know it will fall because you have witnessed gravity's operation countless times and have accepted that it is a law that does not require your belief to function. Unwavering faith means you must develop the same level of certainty about the law of manifestation. When you hold a clear mental image with fixed purpose, the material manifestation must follow as certainly as effect follows cause, not because you are special or deserving, but because you are operating a law that functions independently of your feelings about it. Now consider what happens when you attempt to run this formula with missing variables or reduced intensity. Suppose you create a clear mental image and maintain unwavering faith, but you lack fixed purpose. You hold the image casually, entertaining it when convenient, but abandoning it whenever difficulty appears or more attractive possibilities present themselves. The result is that your image never gains sufficient concentration of attention to impress itself upon formless substance with enough force to cause physical rearrangement. Your faith in the law's operation becomes irrelevant because you have failed to provide the sustained mental pressure required to activate the law. It is like knowing with certainty that a car can travel from New York to Los Angeles if you keep driving west, but then driving west for 10 miles, east for 5 miles, north for 3 miles, and wondering why you never arrive at your destination. The law itself is perfect. Your application is inconsistent. Or suppose you maintain fixed purpose and unwavering faith, but your mental image is vague, constantly shifting or contradictory. You image wealth one day, security the next, freedom the following day, and revenge on those who doubted you the day after that. You have purpose and faith, but your image is scattered across multiple incompatible outcomes, and so the formless substance receives contradictory instructions. It begins to materialize one form, then receives orders to materialize a different form, then receives yet another set of specifications, and the result is confusion rather than creation. The sculptor with perfect skill and unlimited time cannot produce a masterpiece if you change the design every hour and criticize him for failing to complete what you have never allowed him to begin. Perhaps most common is the person who creates a clear mental image and maintains fixed purpose, but lacks unwavering faith. He performs the mental work correctly, but secretly doubts that it will produce results, watches anxiously for evidence of progress, interprets every delay as proof of failure, and maintains a backup plan because he does not truly believe the law will deliver what he has imaged. This person has performed 66% of the formula correctly, yet his lack of faith doesn't merely reduce his results proportionally, it eliminates them entirely, because doubt is not a partial weakening of the formula, but a complete reversal of it. Faith says, it must happen. Doubt says it might not happen. And the law responds to the predominant conviction of your mind. You cannot ride two horses simultaneously in opposite directions and expect to arrive anywhere except in the dirt. The power of recognizing these three variables as an integrated formula, rather than as independent suggestions, is that it allows you to diagnose exactly where your application is breaking down. When the person who understands formulas fails to produce wealth, he does not conclude that wealth is impossible or that the law doesn't work. He asks, which variable am I missing? Or, where have I allowed the intensity of a variable to drop below the required level? This diagnostic approach transforms failure from a permanent verdict into temporary feedback, from a reason to quit into information you can use to refine your method. The chemist whose experiment fails does not abandon chemistry. He checks his measurements, reviews his procedure, and runs the experiment again with corrected variables. But here is the demand that Wattles makes, which most teachers of manifestation carefully avoid. All three variables must be present at full intensity simultaneously and continuously. It is not sufficient to visualize clearly on Monday, maintain purpose on Tuesday, and summon faith on Wednesday. The formula requires all three variables operating at maximum strength all the time, or more precisely, during every moment when you are consciously directing attention toward your desire. This is what makes the certain way certain, but also demanding. It requires a level of mental discipline that most people have never attempted, a sustained concentration of consciousness that feels exhausting until it becomes habitual, a vigilance over your own thought patterns that most people would rather avoid, because it reveals how scattered, contradictory, and self-sabotaging their usual thinking actually is. Think of these three variables as the three legs of a stool. Remove any one leg, and the stool cannot support weight regardless of how strong the remaining two legs are. Shorten any one leg significantly, and the stool becomes unstable, tipping toward collapse whenever you attempt to use it. The formula Wattles discovered is not flexible, adaptable, or forgiving of casual application. It is exact, and it is exact because the law it describes is exact. The universe does not negotiate, compromise, or accept partial efforts that you will complete when you feel more motivated. It responds to the formula, or it does not respond at all, and learning to run the formula correctly with all three variables at full intensity is the entire work of getting rich according to the certain way. What makes this teaching revolutionary is not that it reveals a new secret unknown to previous generations. Humans have been getting rich throughout history by thinking in this certain way, whether they understood the formula consciously or operated it instinctively. What makes it revolutionary is that Wattles codified the pattern into a formula anyone can learn, removing wealth creation from the realm of mysterious talent or divine favor and placing it firmly in the realm of learnable skill. You may not yet be able to run this formula consistently, but the formula itself is not mysterious. It has been mapped, explained, and made available to you if you are willing to practice it with the dedication a musician brings to mastering an instrument or an athlete brings to perfecting a technique. The variables are clear. The formula is complete. The only question remaining is whether you will commit to running it with the precision it demands, understanding that 95% correct application produces 0% results, while 100% correct application produces inevitable success. This is not a teaching for those who want an easier path to wealth. It is a teaching for those who want a certain path to wealth, and certainty always demands precision. The laboratory is prepared, the formula is written on the board, and the question now is whether you have the discipline to follow it exactly as specified, measuring each variable carefully and maintaining all three simultaneously, or whether you will continue treating wealth as the alchemist treats gold, hoping, praying, and guessing, while the chemist in the next room produces results with scientific reliability. If you have been following the deeper teachings of the Masters of Mind, you will recognize that Wallace Wattles did not arrive at his formula in isolation. He was building upon a foundation of metaphysical law that thinkers like Thomas Troward had been systematically mapping with the precision of mathematicians. In our examination of Troward's work, we uncovered a principle that most spiritual teachers find too uncomfortable to state plainly. The universe operates according to mathematical law, not emotional preference, and manifestation is not an art form where creative interpretation is acceptable, but a science where deviation from the formula produces failure as reliably as incorrect arithmetic produces wrong answers. Wattles took this abstract principle and performed an act of translation that makes his work uniquely valuable. He converted the mathematics of mind into practical instructions that can be applied in your daily life. He transformed philosophical theory into operational technique, and he answered the question that Troward's work raises but does not fully address. If the universe is mathematical, what is the exact equation I must solve to produce wealth? The connection between Troward and Wattles is not coincidental or casual. It represents two stages of understanding the same fundamental reality, like the relationship between pure mathematics and engineering. Troward provides the proof that the law exists and operates with mathematical certainty. Wattles provides the formula you must apply to activate that law in service of specific material outcomes. Without Troward, Wattles' method might appear to be motivational philosophy or positive thinking dressed in scientific language. With Troward, Wattles' method reveals itself to be the practical application of principles that can be verified through logic and demonstrated through results. The person who understands both teachings gains a depth of certainty unavailable to those who encounter either teacher in isolation. You are not being asked to believe in Wattles' formula through blind faith, but to recognize it as the applied mathematics of a law that Troward proved operates throughout the entire structure of reality. Consider what this connection means for your relationship with the formula. When Wattles instructs you to hold a clear mental image with unwavering faith, he is not offering psychological advice about the benefits of positive visualization. He is telling you how to satisfy the mathematical requirements of a universal law that responds to thought with the same precision that a calculator responds to numbers. The mental image is not a helpful technique that might improve your chances. It is the specific input required by the law to produce the corresponding output. The faith is not emotional optimism that makes you feel better while waiting for results. It is the acceptance of mathematical certainty that allows you to act with the boldness of someone who knows the outcome is guaranteed if the formula is applied correctly. Every element of Wattles' certain way, when understood through the lens of Troward's mathematical metaphysics, stops being advice and becomes instruction, stops being suggestion and becomes requirement. But here is where the two teachings diverge in emphasis, and understanding this divergence is crucial to applying both correctly. Troward focuses on proving that the law exists and operates universally, while Wattles focuses on the precision required to operate the law successfully. Troward answers the question, does manifestation work through law or through chance? Wattles answers the question, exactly how must I think to make the law produce what I want? This is why encountering Wattles without first understanding Troward often leads to disappointment. People attempt the formula casually with partial commitment, assuming that approximate application will produce approximate results, when in fact, the law demands precision or delivers nothing. They treat the certain way as if it were flexible guidance rather than rigid instruction, like following a recipe more or less, and then complaining that the cake didn't rise. The metaphor Wattles himself uses illuminates this requirement for precision perfectly. He compares the practitioner of his method to a carpenter measuring wood before cutting. A carpenter who needs a board 16 inches long does not measure 15 3/4 inches and declare that about right is sufficient. He measures exactly 16 inches because he knows that precision in measurement determines precision in outcome, that the final structure will only be as accurate as the individual components that comprise it, and that accumulated small errors eventually produce catastrophic failure. In the same way, when you are holding your mental image, maintaining your fixed purpose and sustaining your unwavering faith, about right is not acceptable. Your image must be precisely what you want, your purpose must be absolutely fixed, and your faith must be completely unwavering. Because the law responds to what you actually think, not to what you approximately think, or what you intended to think, or what you hope you were thinking. This demand for precision explains why so many people fail at manifestation despite having learned the basic principles. They have learned that thinking creates reality, and so they think about wealth casually whenever it occurs to them. They have learned that desire attracts outcomes, and so they desire wealth with varying intensity depending on their mood. They have learned that faith activates the law, and so they have faith on good days and doubt on bad days. But the law does not average your thoughts across time to determine what you have been mostly thinking. It responds in each moment to the exact quality and content of your present thought. And if your present thought contains doubt, that doubt cancels the creative power of your faith, regardless of how strong your faith was yesterday. The carpenter cannot cut wood on average correctly. He must cut each board correctly, and you cannot apply the formula on average correctly. You must apply it correctly in each moment of conscious focus. What Troward helps you understand is why this precision matters. Because the universe is not a personality that interprets your intentions charitably or forgives your mistakes generously. It is a system that registers inputs and produces outputs with the indifference of mathematics. When you enter 2 + 2 into a calculator, it returns 4 not because it likes you or because you deserve the correct answer, but because the mathematical relationship between 2 addition and 4 is fixed, unchanging, and impervious to emotional appeals. In the same way, when you hold a clear mental image, 2 combined with fixed purpose, plus, and add unwavering faith, 2, the law must return material manifestation, 4, not because you are worthy, or because the universe has decided to grant your wish, but because the mathematical relationship between these mental causes and material effects is built into the structure of reality itself. This recognition transforms the entire quality of your practice. You stop approaching the formula with hopeful experimentation. Let me try this and see if it works, and start approaching it with mathematical certainty. If I perform these operations correctly, the result must follow. You stop being tentative in your application, constantly checking to see if it's working, anxiously scanning for evidence of progress, because you understand that the carpenter does not measure his board, cut it, and then spend hours examining it with anxiety, hoping that he measured correctly. He knows whether he measured correctly because precision is binary, not gradual. Either your mental image is clear, or it is not. Either your purpose is fixed, or it is not. Either your faith is unwavering, or it is not. And if all 3 variables are present at the required intensity, the result is certain regardless of current appearances. The removal of anxiety that comes from understanding manifestation as mathematical law rather than spiritual favor cannot be overstated. Anxiety exists only in the presence of uncertainty, in situations where you do not know whether your actions will produce your desired outcomes, where you are hoping for results but fearing failure, where you are gambling on possibilities rather than causing certainties. But when you truly grasp that the law must work if you apply the formula correctly, when you internalize this truth at the same depth you have internalized the certainty that dropped objects fall, anxiety becomes impossible because you know the outcome before it appears. The chemist combining hydrogen and oxygen does not experience anxiety about whether water will form. He knows it will form because he understands the law. In the same way, when you hold your mental image with fixed purpose and unwavering faith, you do not experience anxiety about whether wealth will manifest. You know it will manifest because you understand the law. This is the bridge Troward builds to Wattles's practical method. He removes wealth from the category of random occurrence or divine gift and places it firmly in the category of lawful result, predictable outcome, mathematical certainty. And once you cross this bridge, you can never return to your previous relationship with money. Because you have seen behind the curtain, you have recognized that poverty and wealth are not conditions imposed by external circumstances, but states produced by internal formulas, not fates you must accept, but outcomes you can engineer. Not mysterious manifestations of luck or injustice, but mathematical consequences of mental operations performed either correctly or incorrectly. The question is no longer, can I get rich because the law guarantees that anyone can get rich by thinking in the certain way? The question is, will I maintain the precision required to apply the formula correctly, or will I continue treating wealth as if it requires anything other than exact adherence to known law? There exists a specific form of suffering that emerges not from physical deprivation, but from mental confusion about causation. And perhaps no suffering is more widespread in modern society than the fear of poverty, the gnawing anxiety that financial disaster might strike randomly, that your current security could evaporate without warning, that no amount of effort or planning can truly protect you from the possibility of becoming destitute. This fear operates as a constant background noise in millions of minds, coloring every financial decision with nervousness, preventing bold action that might improve circumstances, and creating a perpetual state of defensive contraction where you are always protecting what you have, rather than confidently creating what you want. But here is what Wallace Wattles understood that dissolves this fear completely. You fear poverty only because you believe it can strike randomly, and you believe it can strike randomly only because you have not yet accepted that wealth and poverty are lawful outcomes of specific causes, rather than random events that happen to people regardless of their mental operations. Consider the emotional state of the chemist in his laboratory. Does he fear that the oxygen will suddenly decide to refuse bonding with hydrogen, that the laws governing molecular attraction might capriciously reverse themselves, that chemistry itself might stop working and leave him helpless? The question is absurd because the chemist knows, not believes, not hopes, but knows, that the laws governing chemical reactions do not change based on external circumstances, economic conditions, or the chemist's personal worthiness. The hydrogen and oxygen do not care whether he is having a good day or a bad day, whether the economy is expanding or contracting, whether other chemists in other laboratories are producing better results. They bond into water whenever he combines them correctly, because law governs their behavior with absolute consistency. The chemist is therefore immune to anxiety about whether his experiments will work. His only concern is ensuring he applies the method correctly, and this concern produces focus rather than fear, diligence rather than dread. Now consider what happens when you internalize the same understanding about wealth. The moment you truly accept that wealth is the lawful result of thinking in a certain way, the moment you cross the threshold from intellectual agreement to cellular certainty, fear of poverty becomes as impossible as fear that gravity might stop working and leave you floating helplessly in space. You recognize that poverty is not a random disaster that strikes despite your best efforts. It is the mathematical output of a formula being run incorrectly, just as getting lost is not a mysterious curse, but the inevitable result of following wrong directions. And once you know the formula for wealth, once you understand exactly what causes prosperity to materialize in your life, your relationship with money transforms from anxious hoping into confident application, from defensive protecting into bold creating, from nervous gambling into certain manufacturing. This shift has practical implications that extend far beyond emotional comfort. The person who fears poverty makes fundamentally different decisions than the person who knows with certainty how to cause wealth. The fearful person hoards resources, afraid to invest or spend because each dollar leaving his possession might be needed later to protect against disaster. The certain person circulates resources strategically, understanding that applying the formula correctly makes wealth flow to him with the reliability of water flowing downhill, and therefore money in motion serving his clear mental image is more valuable than money at rest protecting against imaginary catastrophes. The fearful person avoids risk obsessively, taking only actions where success appears guaranteed by external evidence. The certain person embraces intelligent risk boldly, understanding that success is guaranteed not by external circumstances, but by internal application of the formula, and therefore the appearance of risk is merely the gap between his knowledge of the law and observers' ignorance of it. The fearful person constantly monitors his financial situation with anxiety, checking his bank balance multiple times daily, calculating and recalculating whether his resources will be sufficient, trying to predict and prevent every possible threat to his security. This vigilance does not protect him. It perpetuates poverty by keeping his attention focused on lack, by reinforcing the mental image of insufficiency, by broadcasting to the universe through the law of attraction, "I do not have enough, and I might lose even what I have." The certain person rarely thinks about his current financial situation, except when taking practical action, because his attention is occupied with his clear mental image of wealth. His consciousness is saturated with the feeling of already possessing what he desires, and he understands that monitoring current conditions anxiously is like the gardener digging up his seeds every day to check if they're growing. It reveals doubt in the process and actively interferes with the natural unfolding of lawful results. But here is the crucial distinction that prevents this teaching from becoming reckless optimism, disguised as metaphysical certainty. Wattles does not tell you to ignore practical financial management, to spend money you don't have on the assumption that more will magically appear, or to act irresponsibly based on blind faith that the universe will cover your poor decisions. The certainty he advocates is not certainty that you can violate practical principles without consequences. It is certainty that the law of attraction operates as reliably as any other natural law, and therefore if you hold your mental image clearly, maintain your purpose fixedly and sustain your faith unwaveringly, the material means to actualize your image must manifest through natural channels. The bold action he recommends is not foolish risk-taking, but the confident implementation of plans that align with your mental image, undertaken without the paralyzing fear that your best efforts might somehow be thwarted by circumstances beyond your control. This is where understanding Trowad's framework becomes essential to correctly applying Wattles' method. Trowad explains that the universe operates through law, not personality, and therefore your results depend entirely on the causes you set in motion, not on whether the universe feels favorably disposed toward you on any particular day. This recognition eliminates fear because it removes the personal from the equation. You do not need to worry whether you are worthy of wealth, whether you deserve success, whether you have atoned sufficiently for past mistakes, or whether cosmic justice will decide in your favor. The law does not evaluate your character before responding to your thoughts, any more than gravity evaluates your moral standing before responding to your jump off a cliff. You activate the law through correct mental operations, and the law produces the corresponding material effects with complete indifference to every factor except whether you applied the formula correctly. The person who grasps this principle discovers a freedom that most people never experience. Freedom from the need to earn wealth through suffering, to prove worthiness through struggle, to justify prosperity through exhaustive explanation of how you deserve it more than others. The law does not require justification, it requires application. The formula does not demand that you demonstrate your virtue, it demands that you maintain your variables at full intensity. And this is simultaneously more demanding and more liberating than conventional approaches to wealth. More demanding because it places total responsibility on you to think correctly, more liberating because it removes all dependency on external factors cooperating with your plans. When fear of poverty arises in your consciousness, it is a signal that you have temporarily forgotten the law, that you have slipped back into the belief that poverty can strike randomly rather than recognizing it as the lawful consequence of thinking in ways that contradict the formula. The remedy is not to suppress the fear through willpower or to cover it with affirmations you don't believe. The remedy is to remember the law, to recall that wealth is caused not by circumstances, but by consciousness, to recognize that you are not at the mercy of an economy or an employer or a market, but operating a formula that works independently of external conditions. This remembering does not happen through casual reminding, but through daily practice of holding your mental image, reinforcing your fixed purpose, and strengthening your unwavering faith until the law becomes as real to you as gravity, as certain as mathematics, as reliable as the sunrise. The transformation from fear to certainty is not a single dramatic conversion, but a gradual restructuring of your fundamental relationship with money, wealth, and your own power to cause effects in the material world. Each day you apply the formula correctly. You accumulate evidence that the law works. Each time you maintain your mental image despite contradictory appearances, you strengthen your faith in the law's operation. Each moment you choose to focus on your clear vision rather than your current lack. You reinforce the certainty that poverty is not a condition imposed by circumstances, but a result produced by incorrect thinking, and therefore within your power to eliminate through corrected application of known principles. This accumulation of certainty eventually reaches a critical mass where fear becomes impossible, not because you have convinced yourself to be optimistic despite evidence, but because you have verified through repeated experience that the law operates exactly as Wattles described, that the formula produces results exactly as promised, and that wealth flows to you with mathematical reliability whenever you meet the law's requirements. You cannot order from a cosmic catalogue using vague references, hopeful generalizations, or categories so broad that they contain thousands of possible variations. And yet this is precisely how most people approach manifestation. They declare they want more money without specifying how much. They request success without defining what success would look like in specific terms. They desire abundance while maintaining such a fuzzy concept of abundance that the universe has no clear target toward which to direct creative forces. Wallace Wattles insists that this imprecision is not a minor flaw that slightly reduces your effectiveness. It is a complete violation of the formula that guarantees failure, because the first variable, clear mental image, demands specificity at a level that makes most people uncomfortable when they first encounter the requirement. You are not being asked to have a general sense of wanting to improve your financial situation. You are being commanded to construct in your imagination a detailed, precise, sensory-rich picture of exactly what you want, described with such clarity that someone could recreate it from your description alone. Think about how you would report a lost item to the police. You would not say, "I lost something valuable and I'd like it back." Such vagueness renders the report useless because it provides no information the police can act upon. Instead, you would describe the item in exhaustive detail: its size, color, shape, material, any distinguishing marks, where you last saw it, what makes it valuable, how someone could recognize it if they found it. You would be specific because you understand that specificity is required for someone to locate what you're seeking. The universe operates according to the same principle. Formless substance is not a mind-reading entity that intuits what you really want beneath your vague requests. It is more accurately understood as a creative medium that takes the exact shape of whatever form you impress upon it through clear mental imagery. And if you impress no clear form, it produces no clear result. Consider the implications of this requirement. When Wattles instructs you to hold a clear mental image, he is not suggesting that clarity might be helpful or that more detailed visualization could enhance your results. He is stating that without a clear, specific, detailed mental image, you have not satisfied the first variable of the formula, and therefore the formula cannot run regardless of how perfectly you execute the other two variables. This is not flexibility or adaptability in the formula. This is a non-negotiable requirement built into the law's operation. It is like attempting to bake a cake while substituting hope for flour. The other ingredients might be present in perfect proportions, but the absence of flour makes cake production impossible because you have removed an essential component that cannot be replaced or approximated. The resistance most people feel when confronted with this demand for specificity reveals something important about their relationship with desire. They do not actually want to specify exactly what they want because precise specification eliminates escape routes, removes the ability to rationalize partial results as success, and creates objective criteria by which they must evaluate whether the formula worked. If you declare, "I want more money," and you find $5, you can convince yourself the formula worked by adjusting your interpretation of more. If you declare, "I want $10,000 in cash to arrive in my bank account within 90 days through ethical means that benefit others," you have created a specific target that either manifests or does not. And this specificity terrifies people who are more comfortable with the ambiguity that allows them to avoid confronting whether they are actually applying the formula correctly. But specificity serves a function beyond merely making your desire clear to the universe. It serves as a forcing mechanism that compels you to confront what you actually want rather than what you think you should want, what sounds impressive to others, or what you have been conditioned to pursue. When you attempt to create a genuinely specific mental image of wealth, you quickly discover that wealth is an abstraction that means nothing until you define it in concrete terms. What does wealth look like in your actual life? Not in someone else's life, not in a movie or a social media post, but in your specific circumstances with your specific values and your specific definition of a life well lived. Does it mean a particular home in a particular location? Does it mean freedom from particular obligations? Does it mean the ability to pursue particular activities without financial constraint? Does it mean a specific monthly income that covers specific expenses and desires? This process of specification is not merely preparatory work before you begin applying the formula. It is the first step in applying the formula because you cannot hold a clear mental image of something you have not clearly defined, and you cannot clearly define what you want without forcing yourself to choose from among competing desires, to prioritize among multiple possible futures, to commit to a specific outcome rather than maintaining optionality across vague possibilities. The person who refuses this work of specification is revealing that he does not yet truly want wealth enough to commit to a particular form of wealth. He wants to want wealth in the abstract, while avoiding the accountability that comes with declaring precisely what wealth means to him. Wattles uses the metaphor of describing a lost item to a detective, and this metaphor is more powerful than it might initially appear. The detective cannot search for what you cannot describe, cannot identify what you have not specified, cannot return what you have defined so vaguely that it matches 10,000 different objects. In the same way, the creative forces of the universe, formless substance in Wattles' terminology, cannot materialize what you have not imaged clearly, cannot construct what you have not specified precisely, cannot deliver what you have described so generally that it could manifest in forms you would not even recognize as your desire fulfilled. The universe is not withholding wealth from you. You are withholding clear instructions from the universe. There is a test you can perform right now to evaluate whether your mental image meets the clarity requirement of the formula. If someone gave you a blank sheet of paper and asked you to draw or describe in words exactly what you want your financial life to look like 1 year from now, could you do it? Could you specify your income to the dollar? Could you describe where you are living and what that location provides that your current location does not? Could you detail how you spend your time differently than you spend it now? Could you identify what purchases you have made, what debts you have eliminated, what investments you have initiated? If you cannot answer these questions with precision, you do not yet have a clear mental image. You have a vague longing, and the formula does not respond to vague longing any more than a GPS responds to, "I want to go somewhere nice." The work of creating this clear mental image is mental effort of a quality most people have never attempted. It requires you to sit with yourself in focused concentration, to examine your actual desires beneath the surface of social conditioning, to choose deliberately rather than drift passively, to commit to a specific future rather than keep all options open indefinitely. This is why most people never complete this first variable, not because they do not understand the instruction, but because the instruction demands a level of mental discipline, self-honesty, and commitment that they have been unconsciously avoiding through vagueness. As long as your desires remain general, you can pursue them casually. The moment you make them specific, you must pursue them seriously or admit you are not genuinely committed. But here is what makes this work worthwhile beyond its function in the formula. The process of creating a clear, specific, detailed mental image of what you want, forces you to take ownership of your life in a way that most people never do. Most people live reactively, responding to circumstances, accepting opportunities that appear, making decisions based on what seems possible rather than what they actually desire. The act of specifying exactly what you want, regardless of whether it seems possible given your current circumstances, is an act of declaring your own authority over your life, of refusing to accept that your future must be determined by your past, of claiming the creative power that Wattles insists belongs to every human consciousness capable of holding a clear mental image and thinking in the certain way. So the question before you is not whether you generally want more wealth. Of course you do, everyone does. The question is whether you are willing to do the mental work of specifying exactly what form you want that wealth to take, exactly how much you want, exactly when you want it, exactly what you will do with it, and exactly what your life will look like when you have it. This specification is not optional preliminary work. It is the first non-negotiable variable of the formula, and until you complete it with genuine precision, you have not begun to apply the formula regardless of how much you have read, how many affirmations you have spoken, or how positively you have tried to think. There exists a vast chasm between wanting something and being committed to actualizing it, and this chasm swallows the dreams of millions of people who confuse preference with purpose, who mistake casual interest for unwavering commitment, who fail to recognize that the second variable of Wattles' formula, fixed purpose, demands a quality of determination that most people have never summoned in their entire lives. Purpose in the context of this formula is not your motivation for wanting wealth, not your reasons for desiring change, not the story you tell yourself about why prosperity would be nice to have. Purpose is the steel-reinforced commitment that what you have imaged must manifest, that you will not be deterred by obstacles or discouraged by delays, that you have decided at the deepest level of your being that the actualization of your mental image is not negotiable, not optional, not subject to revision based on whether the journey proves convenient or comfortable. Consider the difference between the tourist and the commuter. The tourist travels for pleasure and changes his destination if the journey becomes unpleasant, if weather deteriorates, if he discovers a more attractive possibility, or if he simply loses interest in reaching his originally planned location. His travel has no fixed purpose. It serves only his immediate gratification, and he feels no obligation to complete what he began if completion stops being enjoyable. The commuter travels because he has decided he will be at a specific location at a specific time regardless of traffic, weather, vehicle problems, or how he feels about the journey on any particular day. He has fixed purpose. He is going to arrive at his destination because he has committed to being there. And this commitment is not subject to renegotiation every time he encounters an inconvenience. Most people approach wealth like tourists rather than commuters. They want prosperity, as long as pursuing it remains comfortable, convenient, and free from significant challenge. They maintain their mental image as long as immediate results appear, abandon their visualization when circumstances seem to contradict it, and revise their goals downward whenever achieving them would require more effort than they feel like expending. This is not fixed purpose, this is casual preference. And the formula does not respond to casual preference because the law requires sustained pressure, concentrated attention, and unwavering direction to impress your desire upon formless substance with sufficient force to cause physical rearrangement of circumstances. Wattles uses the metaphor of the glue that holds the image in place, and this metaphor reveals exactly why purpose is non-negotiable in the formula. Without purpose, your clear mental image exists only during moments when you remember to think about it, when you feel motivated to visualize it, when circumstances seem favorable enough to make its manifestation seem plausible. The image appears and disappears from your consciousness based on your mood, your energy level, your recent experiences, and your interpretation of whether you are making progress. But formless substance does not respond to images that flicker in and out of consciousness. It responds to images held steadily over time, with such consistency that they eventually impress themselves upon the substance deeply enough to cause materialization. Think of it this way. If you wanted to carve your name into a stone using only water, You could not succeed by dripping water randomly, a drop today, another drop next week, perhaps a few drops next month if you remember and feel motivated. The stone would remain unchanged because the water makes no cumulative impact when application is inconsistent. But if you arranged for water to drip on the exact same spot consistently, hour after hour, day after day, eventually the water would carve a permanent impression into the stone, despite being softer than the material it is shaping. Fixed purpose is the mechanism that keeps your mental image focused on the exact same desire with the exact same intensity, consistently over time, allowing the cumulative impact of your sustained attention to overcome the apparent resistance of circumstances and carve your desire into physical reality. The quality of commitment that Wattles calls fixed purpose reveals itself most clearly, not when everything is going well, but when you encounter obstacles, delays, or apparent evidence that your desire will not manifest. This is when most people abandon ship, when they decide that the formula doesn't work, that manifestation isn't real, that they should be more realistic about what is possible given their circumstances. They interpret difficulty as evidence that they are on the wrong path, rather than recognizing it as the resistance that every act of creation must push through. But the person with fixed purpose interprets the same obstacles differently. Difficulty is not evidence that the goal is unattainable. It is simply information about what must be handled, overcome, or worked around on the path to the goal's actualization. Here is the crucial distinction. Fixed purpose does not mean blind stubbornness that refuses to adjust tactics when tactics prove ineffective. It means unwavering commitment to the outcome combined with complete flexibility about methods. If your clear mental image is specific about the outcome, if you have defined exactly what you want, then your purpose can remain fixed on that outcome while you remain completely flexible about how you get there. The person with genuine fixed purpose does not cling to one strategy when that strategy fails. He immediately begins exploring alternative strategies because his commitment is to the outcome, not to any particular path toward that outcome. But fixed purpose does mean that you do not revise your desired outcome downward simply because achieving it proves more challenging than you anticipated. It means you do not abandon your mental image because manifestation is taking longer than you hoped. It means you do not let temporary discouragement convince you to settle for less than what you originally imaged. This is the test that separates those who will succeed with Wattles' formula from those who will read about it, attempt it casually, and conclude it doesn't work. When you encounter your first significant obstacle, will you maintain your fixed purpose and find a way through? Or will you use the obstacle as justification for lowering your standards and reducing your vision? The relationship between clear mental image and fixed purpose is symbiotic. The clearer your image, the easier it becomes. To maintain fixed purpose, because you know exactly what you are working toward and can therefore evaluate every action against the standard of whether it moves you toward that specific outcome. Conversely, the more fixed your purpose, the clearer your image must become because vague purposes can be satisfied by vague outcomes, but fixed purposes demand that you know exactly what you will consider success. Together, these two variables create a feedback loop where each strengthens the other. Your clarity of vision reinforces your commitment to achieving it, and your commitment to achieving it forces you to maintain clarity about what it actually is. There is a statement Wattles makes that most readers pass over too quickly, and yet it contains the entire secret of why most people fail at this formula. Without purpose, you are not commanding the universe to produce results. You are merely suggesting possible outcomes that you might find acceptable if they happen to appear without too much effort on your part. Read that again. The universe does not respond to suggestions, preferences, or wishes. It responds to commands, but only commands issued with the authority that comes from absolute commitment. Fixed purpose is what gives you that authority, not authority over the universe as if you were imposing your will on a resistant force, but authority in your own consciousness. The internal certainty that you mean what you say, that you will do what you commit to doing, that you are not casually experimenting with manifestation, but seriously applying a formula you expect to work. The practical test of whether you have fixed purpose is simple. If someone offered you your exact desired outcome right now, but told you that receiving it would require you to maintain perfect adherence to the formula, holding your clear mental image, sustaining unwavering faith, taking all necessary actions, every single day without exception for the next 12 months, would you accept the deal? If you would, you have fixed purpose. If you would hesitate, if you would wonder whether you can maintain that level of commitment, if you would want to negotiate for an easier path, then you do not yet have fixed purpose. You have preference, and preference will not activate the formula. So the second variable stands before you, as both requirement and test. You must develop fixed purpose not to satisfy some arbitrary demand, but because the law requires sustained pressure to produce results, because formless substance responds to the cumulative impact of consistent focus rather than sporadic attention, because your clear mental image will fade from consciousness without the glue of purpose holding it firmly in place regardless of circumstances. The question is not whether you want wealth. That question is meaningless because everyone wants wealth. The question is whether you are willing to commit to its actualization with such intensity that obstacles become irrelevant, delays become temporary, and doubt becomes impossible because you have decided that the manifestation of your desire is not a possibility you are exploring, but a certainty you are creating through deliberate application of known law. There exists in chemistry a class of substances called catalysts, materials that do not themselves undergo permanent change, but whose presence dramatically accelerates reactions that would otherwise proceed slowly or not at all. And in the science of getting rich, as Wallace Wattles formulated it, gratitude functions as precisely such a catalyst in the manifestation formula. Most people encounter the instruction to practice gratitude as moral advice about being appreciative, as spiritual guidance about counting blessings, or as psychological technique for improving mood. And while these interpretations capture something true about gratitude's effects, they completely miss its functional role in the manifestation formula. Gratitude is not an optional addition that makes the process more pleasant. It is the catalyst that causes clear mental image and fixed purpose to bond with formless substance in a way that produces rapid materialization. And without this catalyst, the formula runs slowly, inefficiently, or not at all, despite perfect execution of the other two variables. Consider what happens in your consciousness when you shift into genuine gratitude, not the performative gratitude of saying thank you out of social obligation, but the deep, felt sense of appreciation for what you have or what you are receiving. In that state, several things happen simultaneously at the mental level. Your attention moves from lack to abundance, from what is missing to what is present, from future anxiety to present acknowledgement. Your emotional frequency shifts from the constricted feeling of wanting, which implies not having, to the expanded feeling of possessing, which implies sufficiency. Your relationship with the universe shifts from demanding something it has withheld to receiving something it is providing. And most importantly for the formula's operation, your consciousness moves into what Wattles calls closer harmony with the source. Your mind synchronizes with the creative principle that governs manifestation in the same way that tuning a radio dial synchronizes the receiver with the broadcast frequency. This last point is crucial and is often misunderstood. Gratitude does not manipulate the universe into giving you what you want, as if the source requires your appreciation before it will release resources. Rather, gratitude removes the interference pattern created by the feeling of lack, by the consciousness of separation from what you desire, by the mental state that broadcasts "I don't have," even while you are attempting to manifest "I will have." You cannot simultaneously hold the vibration of lacking and the vibration of receiving. These are mutually exclusive states, and most people attempting manifestation are unknowingly sabotaging their own formula by visualizing what they want, which requires acknowledging they don't have it, while feeling the absence of what they want, which reinforces the lack. Gratitude breaks this pattern by allowing you to feel the vibration of receiving even before the physical manifestation appears, and this vibrational alignment is what allows formless substance to flow into the form you have imaged. Think of it this way. If you are trying to fill a container with water but the container has a hole in the bottom, the water flows out as fast as you pour it in, and the container never fills regardless of how much water you provide. The whole in this metaphor is the consciousness of lack, the feeling that you don't have what you need, that resources are limited, that you are separate from abundance, that getting what you want requires overcoming resistance. Gratitude plugs the hole by shifting your consciousness from lack to sufficiency, from separation to connection, from resistance to flow. With the hole plugged, the water you are pouring, your clear mental image held with fixed purpose, accumulates in the container until it is full, until manifestation is complete, until your desire has materialized in physical form. The statement Wattles makes about gratitude's function is worth examining word by word. Gratitude brings your mind into the closest possible harmony with the source. Notice he does not say gratitude makes you feel better, does not say it improves your mood, does not say it makes you a nicer person. He says it brings your mind into harmony with the source, and harmony here is a technical term, not a poetic expression. When two frequencies are in harmony, they amplify each other. When they are out of harmony, they create interference that reduces or cancels the signal. Your mind operating in gratitude is harmonious with the creative source. Your mind operating in lack consciousness is disharmonious with the creative source, and the formula works through harmony, not through override. You are not imposing your will on a resistant universe, but aligning your consciousness with creative principles that are always operating, always ready to produce form from thought, always waiting for minds that think in the certain way. But here is where most people make a critical error in applying gratitude to the manifestation process. They attempt to manufacture gratitude through affirmations that contradict their actual feelings, through forced positive thinking that their consciousness rejects as false, through saying I am grateful for my wealth, when they are actually experiencing anxiety about bills. This performative gratitude not only fails to function as a catalyst, it actually reinforces the lack consciousness it is trying to overcome, because you are constantly reminding yourself that you are trying to feel grateful for something you don't actually feel grateful for, which means you are simultaneously acknowledging its absence and attempting to deny that absence. The result is internal contradiction, not harmony. Genuine gratitude, the kind that functions as a catalyst in the formula, must be authentic. It must be gratitude for something you actually appreciate, something that actually exists in your present experience, something that generates a genuine feeling of abundance rather than a forced denial of lack. This is why Wattles instructs you to begin by being grateful for what you already have, not for what you are trying to manifest. You might not yet have the wealth you are imaging, but you have something. You have life itself, consciousness, the ability to think, food to eat today, shelter that protected you last night, relationships that provide value, experiences that have taught you, opportunities that exist right now. Starting with genuine gratitude for what is actually present allows you to access the feeling state of gratitude authentically. And once you have accessed that state through real appreciation for real things, you can extend it to include what you are in the process of manifesting. This is the bridge. You feel genuine gratitude for what you have, which shifts your consciousness from lack to abundance. From that abundance consciousness, you extend gratitude to what you are receiving, which means you relate to your mental image not as something absent that you hope will arrive someday, but as something present that you are already receiving, already experiencing at the mental level, already possessing in consciousness even before it manifests in physical form. This extension of gratitude from what is physically present to what is mentally present allows you to maintain the vibrational frequency of receiving consistently, and this consistent frequency is what allows the formula to run at maximum speed. Wattles makes another statement about gratitude that reveals its catalytic function. It speeds up the reaction. This is not metaphorical language dressed as science. It is a precise description of what gratitude does to the manifestation process. Without gratitude, your clear mental image and fixed purpose are still operating, still impressing themselves upon formless substance, still moving toward materialization. But slowly, gradually, with the kind of timeline that tests faith and allows doubt to creep in. With gratitude functioning as catalyst, the same clear mental image and fixed purpose, produce manifestation more quickly because you have removed the interference pattern of lack consciousness and aligned yourself with creative flow. The formula does not work better, it works faster, which in practice means it works more reliably because fewer people maintain perfect application of the formula over extended periods when results seem delayed. There is a specific practice Wattles recommends that implements gratitude as catalyst, rather than treating it as separate spiritual exercise. Before you visualize what you want, before you renew your fixed purpose, before you take any action toward your goal, you first spend time in genuine gratitude for what you already have and for what you are in the process of receiving. This sequence is not arbitrary, it is functional, because gratitude establishes the consciousness from which effective visualization proceeds. If you visualize from lack consciousness, your visualization reinforces lack. If you visualize from gratitude consciousness, your visualization reinforces receiving. Same visualization, different starting frequency, completely different result. Think about the implications for your daily practice. Every morning when you engage with your mental image, you must first engage with gratitude, not as a warm-up exercise, but as the necessary preparation that allows your mind to harmonize with the source before you attempt to impress your desire upon formless substance. This gratitude cannot be rushed, cannot be performed mechanically, cannot be faked through affirmations you don't feel. You must actually find things you genuinely appreciate and stay with that appreciation until you feel the shift in your consciousness from constriction to expansion, from anxiety to peace, from lack to sufficiency. Only from that shifted state do you proceed to holding your clear mental image, because only from that state will your image be impressed upon formless substance without the interference of lack consciousness sabotaging the impression. The person who masters this use of gratitude as catalyst discovers something remarkable. Manifestation stops feeling like hard work, like pushing against resistance, like trying to force the universe to give you what it seems reluctant to provide. Instead, manifestation begins to feel like allowing, like opening to receive what is already flowing toward you, like removing obstacles to a natural process rather than creating results through effort. This shift from effortful creation to effortless allowing is the signature of gratitude functioning correctly in the formula. Not because you are doing less work, but because you have aligned the frequency of your consciousness with the frequency of creative flow, and in that alignment, materialization proceeds with the ease of water flowing downhill rather than the struggle of water being pumped uphill. But Wattles warns against a specific trap that catches many people attempting to use gratitude in manifestation. You cannot be grateful for what you have while simultaneously resenting what you don't have, cannot appreciate present blessings while complaining about present limitations, cannot be in harmony with the source while judging your current circumstances as unacceptable. Gratitude is not a technique you perform for 15 minutes in the morning and then abandon for the rest of the day. It is a state of consciousness you learn to maintain consistently, or at least return to repeatedly throughout your waking hours. The more consistently you can maintain gratitude consciousness, the more consistently the formula produces accelerated manifestation, because you are providing continuous catalyst rather than intermittent catalyst. The final piece of understanding gratitude's catalytic function is recognizing that it works even when you don't feel grateful for the specific thing you are trying to manifest. You might not yet feel grateful for the wealth that hasn't appeared, but you can feel grateful for the law that makes wealth inevitable when you apply the formula correctly. You can feel grateful for the knowledge Wattles provided. You can feel grateful for the ability to hold a clear mental image. You can feel grateful for the opportunity to apply a formula that, if followed precisely, must produce wealth with scientific certainty. This gratitude for the process, for the law, for the opportunity itself, generates the same catalytic effect as gratitude for results, because it shifts your consciousness into harmony with creative principle, regardless of what specific form you are attempting to manifest. The person who believes manifestation is a one-time operation, visualize what you want, hold the image briefly, release it to the universe, and then wait passively for results to appear, has fundamentally misunderstood how the formula works, and why most attempts at manifestation fail. Wattles is explicit about a requirement that most teachers of manifestation either skip or underemphasize, perhaps because it is too demanding for audiences seeking quick fixes. You must audit the formula daily, examining each variable to verify that it remains at full intensity, checking whether your clear mental image is still precise or has become fuzzy, assessing whether your fixed purpose remains unwavering or has weakened under pressure, evaluating whether your unwavering faith is still solid or has been contaminated by doubt. This daily audit is not optional maintenance, it is essential operation, because your mind is not a machine that maintains settings automatically. It is a dynamic system that drifts toward entropy unless you actively maintain order through conscious direction. Consider what happens to your clear mental image over time if you do not consciously maintain it. The image that was sharp and detailed when you first created it gradually loses precision as other concerns occupy your attention, as daily problems demand mental energy, as the gap between your current reality and your desired reality generates doubt that clouds the image. Details that were specific become general. Colors that were vivid fade to vague impressions. The feeling state that accompanied the image when you first formed it dissolves into abstract concept. What began as a three-dimensional, sensory-rich, emotionally engaging picture of exactly what you want degrades into a two-dimensional, lifeless, generic notion that it would be nice to have more money. And with this degradation of image clarity comes degradation of the formula's power, because you are no longer impressing a clear form upon formless substance. You are broadcasting static, and static produces random results or no results. The same degradation happens to fixed purpose if you do not actively maintain it. The commitment that felt absolute when you first decided to manifest wealth gradually weakens as obstacles appear, as progress seems slow, as other opportunities seem more immediately achievable. Your purpose remains fixed only in theory, while in practice it has become negotiable, subject to revision whenever maintaining it becomes uncomfortable or inconvenient. You still claim you want wealth, but your behavior reveals that you want it only under certain conditions, only if pursuing it doesn't require too much sacrifice, only if results appear quickly enough to keep you motivated. This is not fixed purpose. This is preference with an expiration date, and the formula does not respond to preference any more than a combination. Lock responds to almost the correct combination. Even unwavering faith, perhaps especially unwavering faith, requires daily maintenance, because doubt is not a one-time threat you overcome permanently. It is a constant pressure that requires constant counter-pressure to keep from eroding your certainty. Every piece of contradictory evidence your senses report, every bill that arrives, every opportunity that seems to pass you by, every success you observe in others that hasn't yet materialized in your own life, presents an invitation to doubt the law's operation. If you do not consciously reaffirm your faith daily, these invitations accumulate until doubt becomes your default position and faith becomes the exception you manage to summon occasionally when you remember to think positively. But the formula requires faith to be your default position and doubt to be the rare exception you immediately correct whenever it appears. This is why Wattles insists you must ask yourself every morning, is my image clear? Is my faith strong? Is my gratitude high? These are not rhetorical questions. They are diagnostic questions designed to force honest assessment of whether you are actually running the formula or merely pretending to run it while actually operating in the same lack consciousness that has produced your current results. The person who asks these questions honestly will discover uncomfortable truths, that his image has blurred, that his faith has wavered, that his gratitude has been replaced by complaint. But discovering these truths is the first step in correcting them, and the formula works only when all three variables are present at full intensity, simultaneously, which means daily correction of daily drift is not neurotic perfectionism. It is practical necessity. If the answer to any of the three diagnostic questions is no, Wattles gives instruction that most people find extreme. Stop everything and fix the mixture. Not try to compensate by being extra positive today, not hope it will get better tomorrow, not keep going and see what happens. Stop everything and fix what is broken in your application of the formula. This instruction reveals how serious Wattles is about precision. A formula with one variable missing or weakened is not a 66% effective formula producing 66% results. It is a broken formula producing 0 results while consuming your time and energy that could be invested in running the formula correctly. Think about what stop everything and fix the mixture means in practical terms. If you discover during your morning audit that your mental image has become vague, you do not proceed with your day, hoping your visualization will somehow work anyway. You sit down immediately and do the mental work of recreating the image with full clarity, adding back the details that have faded, re-engaging the emotions that have dulled, rebuilding the picture until it is as vivid and precise as when you first formed it. If you discover your fixed purpose has weakened, you do not tell yourself you'll try harder tomorrow. You examine what caused the weakening, you reaffirm your commitment to the outcome, you mentally rehearse maintaining that commitment when obstacles appear. You rebuild the steel-reinforced determination that characterizes genuine purpose rather than casual preference. If you discover your unwavering faith has been contaminated by doubt, you do not ignore the doubt and force yourself to keep visualizing. You address the doubt directly by reviewing the logical foundation that proves the law must work, by recalling past experiences where mental causation produced physical results, by studying evidence that the formula has worked for others, by reconnecting with the gratitude that harmonizes your mind with the source. You repair your faith not through positive affirmations you don't believe, but through intellectual reconstruction of certainty based on understanding how the law operates. This daily audit transforms your relationship with the manifestation process from passive hoping to active engineering. You stop being someone who tried manifesting but it didn't work, and become someone who maintains a formula with the same diligence a chemist maintains his laboratory equipment, checking for contamination, verifying proper function, correcting immediately when any variable falls below required intensity. The chemist does not blame chemistry when his experiment fails. He blames contaminated reagents or improper procedure, and then he corrects the problem and runs the experiment again. You must approach the manifestation formula with the same scientific rigor. But here is what makes this daily audit bearable, rather than burdensome. As you practice it consistently, the act of maintaining the formula becomes easier because you develop the mental muscles required to hold clear image, fixed purpose, and unwavering faith simultaneously. What felt difficult during your first week becomes manageable by your first month, and becomes natural by your third month, not because the law changed its requirements, but because you have grown stronger in your ability to meet them. The pianist does not complain that Beethoven's sonatas remain difficult to play. He practices until his ability to play them improves, and eventually what seemed impossible becomes achievable through developed skill. The daily audit also prevents the most common cause of manifestation failure: running a broken formula for weeks or months without realizing you are sabotaging your own success, then concluding that the formula doesn't work when actually you never ran it correctly. The person who audits daily catches drift immediately. His image starts to blur on Tuesday, he notices it Wednesday morning, he corrects it before Wednesday ends, and his formula remains operational. The person who does not audit continues with a blurry image for weeks, wonders why results aren't appearing, loses faith in the process, and abandons the formula entirely when all he needed to do was sharpen his image. This is the difference between amateur application and professional application of any skill. The amateur practices when motivated and then wonders why his performance is inconsistent. The professional maintains his fundamentals daily, regardless of motivation, and therefore produces consistent results. You must become a professional in applying the science of getting rich, which means treating daily audit not as optional maintenance when convenient, but as non-negotiable practice that happens every morning before you engage with the demands of your day. The final benefit of daily audit is that it keeps manifestation from becoming a background process you ignore until results appear. It keeps you actively engaged with your formula, consciously aware of your mental state, deliberately maintaining the consciousness required for manifestation to occur. This active engagement prevents the drift into passive hoping, the slide back into lack consciousness, the unconscious return to old patterns of thinking that produced your current results. You cannot maintain old thinking patterns when you are auditing your formula daily, because the audit forces you to confront any deviation from the certain way and correct it immediately rather than allowing it to compound over time. We have traveled through the laboratory of consciousness, where Wallace Wattles conducted his revolutionary experiments. Examined the precise formula he discovered that removes wealth from the realm of luck and places it firmly in the domain of law, and explored each variable that must be present for the formula to produce its guaranteed outcome. Now we arrive at a synthesis that most people find simultaneously liberating and terrifying. Poverty is not a condition imposed by external circumstances beyond your control, not a punishment from an unjust universe, not the result of insufficient opportunities or unfavorable timing. Poverty is simply, mathematically, inevitably the result of running a broken equation. Fix the mathematics, and you fix the money, because wealth and poverty are effects rather than causes, outputs rather than inputs, results that appear automatically when specific mental operations are performed correctly or incorrectly. This recognition requires you to surrender the most comfortable excuse for continued financial struggle. The belief that your poverty results from factors outside your control, from an economy that won't cooperate, from employers who won't pay you enough, from a system rigged against you, from circumstances that prevent you from doing what is necessary to become wealthy. Wattles removes this excuse completely by demonstrating that wealth operates according to law independent of circumstances, that the formula works for anyone who runs it correctly regardless of starting conditions, that the person who thinks in the certain way becomes rich with mathematical certainty, while the person who does not think in the certain way remains poor with equal certainty. There is no third category, no middle ground where you mostly follow the formula and receive partial results. The law responds to correct application with wealth and to incorrect application with poverty, and the difference between these outcomes is determined entirely by your mental operations. Consider the implications. If poverty is the result of broken mathematics, then you have been suffering unnecessarily, struggling against imaginary limitations, accepting lack that could have been eliminated simply by correcting the formula you were running unconsciously. Every month you have lived with financial anxiety, every opportunity you have foregone because you couldn't afford it, every dream you have deferred because wealth seemed unattainable given your circumstances. All of this suffering was optional, the result not of reality's genuine constraints, but of mental operations that violated the formula without you realizing you were running a formula at all. This recognition can generate anger at wasted time, but more productively, it can generate determination to stop running broken formulas and start running the certain way with the precision it demands. The synthesis Wattles offers is that you do not need different circumstances. You need different consciousness. You do not need more opportunities. You need more precision in applying law. You do not need luck to shift in your favor. You need to stop believing in luck and start believing in causation, in formula, in the mathematical certainty that specific mental operations produce specific material results with the reliability of chemical reactions. The person who grasps this synthesis completely never again thinks, "I hope I get rich," or "I wish circumstances would improve." He thinks, "I will maintain clear image, fixed purpose, and unwavering faith with catalytic gratitude, and wealth must manifest because I am operating a law that cannot fail to produce its effect when I provide its cause." This is the transformation from victim to architect, from passive receiver of circumstances to active creator of outcomes, from someone who waits for life to get better to someone who engineers life to align with his clearly defined vision. And this transformation is available not to a select few with special abilities, but to anyone willing to learn the formula and apply it with the precision a chemist applies chemical formulas, not hoping the experiment will work, not trying to cut corners, not approximating the measurements, but following the instructions exactly as specified and then observing the inevitable result. You stand now at a threshold where most people turn back, not because the path forward is unclear, but because it requires them to accept a level of responsibility for their financial condition that feels overwhelming. It is easier to blame the economy, the system, your past, your circumstances, or your lack of opportunities than to accept that you have been running a formula, perhaps unconsciously, perhaps incorrectly, but a formula nonetheless, and that your current results are the mathematical output of the formula you have been running. But this responsibility, which feels like burden when you first accept it, transforms into power when you understand its implications. If your financial condition is the result of a formula you have been running, then changing your financial condition requires only changing the formula. And changing the formula is entirely within your control, regardless of external circumstances. Wallace Wattles discovered something that most people spend their entire lives refusing to see. The universe is not withholding wealth from you until you prove worthy, until you suffer enough, until you work hard enough, or until circumstances finally align in your favor. The universe is a system that responds to inputs with outputs, to causes with effects, to formulas with results, and it responds with complete impartiality to anyone who satisfies the requirements of the law. This means wealth is not reserved for the lucky, the privileged, the connected, or those born into favorable circumstances. It is available to anyone willing to think in the certain way, to hold a clear mental image with fixed purpose and unwavering faith, to maintain these variables consistently despite obstacles, delays, or contradictory appearances. The empowerment in this teaching is absolute. You do not need anyone's permission to become wealthy. Do not need circumstances to cooperate with your plans. Do not need the economy to improve or opportunities to appear before you can begin applying the formula. You need only your own consciousness operating correctly, your own mind maintaining the three variables at full intensity, your own attention focused on your clear vision rather than your current lack. The laboratory in which you create wealth is not in the external world where you must compete with others for limited resources. It is in your own mind where you have complete authority, where no one can interfere with your application of the formula, where you can run the certain way as precisely as you choose, regardless of what anyone else is doing or thinking. This recognition changes everything about how you approach wealth. You stop looking for the right opportunity and start becoming the person who creates opportunities through clear vision. You stop waiting for permission and start claiming the authority that belongs to anyone who understands how the law operates. You stop competing with others for scarce resources and start connecting with the infinite formless substance that responds to everyone's thoughts simultaneously without depletion. You stop treating wealth as something you must chase, earn, or deserve, and start treating it as something you cause through precise mental operations that produce guaranteed results when performed correctly. But Wattles makes a promise so definite that it leaves no room for hedging, no space for maybe or probably or if circumstances cooperate. He states flatly, "The men and women who practice the foregoing instructions will certainly get rich, and the riches they receive will be in exact proportion to the definiteness of their vision." Read those words again. Will certainly get rich, not might get rich, not could get rich if lucky, but will certainly get rich. This is not motivational exaggeration. This is the statement of a man who discovered a law, tested it thoroughly, verified its operation repeatedly, and felt confident declaring its certainty, because he had proven through experience that the formula works with scientific reliability when applied with scientific precision. The qualifier he adds is crucial. The riches they receive will be in exact proportion to the definiteness of their vision. This explains why two people can both claim to be applying the formula, yet receive vastly different results. The difference is not that the law worked for one and failed for the other, but that one held a vague, general, constantly shifting image, while the other held a clear, specific, unwavering vision. The law responds exactly to what you give it. It returns precisely what you input. Vague input produces vague output. Specific input produces specific output. This is not the law being selective. This is the law being mathematical, responding with perfect precision to the exact quality of consciousness you provide. So the message of empowerment is this: you are not powerless in the face of economic forces beyond your control, not helpless to change your financial condition, not dependent on circumstances you cannot influence. You have access to a formula that, when run correctly with all three variables at full intensity, consistently over time, must produce wealth in your life with the same certainty that chemical formulas produce their predictable outcomes. This certainty is not based on hope, faith in the mystical or optimistic belief that somehow things will work out. It is based on understanding that you live in a lawful universe where effects follow causes, where results follow formulas, where wealth follows the certain way of thinking. The only question remaining is whether you will apply this formula with the precision it demands. Will you create a clear mental image specific enough that someone could recreate exactly what you want from your description alone? Will you maintain fixed purpose that does not waver when obstacles appear or dissolve when progress seems slow? Will you sustain unwavering faith in the law's operation, even when current circumstances seem to contradict the possibility of your vision manifesting? Will you catalyze the formula with genuine gratitude that harmonizes your consciousness with the source? And will you audit these variables daily, correcting immediately whenever any variable falls below required intensity? These questions are not rhetorical. They are the actual work, the real requirement, the precise practice that determines whether you remain in poverty or cross into wealth. And the beauty of Wattles' teaching is that it removes all mystery from this crossing. You know exactly what is required, you know exactly how to evaluate whether you are meeting the requirements, and you know with certainty that meeting the requirements produces the guaranteed result. There is no luck involved, no hoping necessary, no praying required, only precise application of a known formula that works for everyone who runs it correctly. The laboratory is open before you, equipped with everything necessary to perform the experiment that will transform your financial reality. The formula has been written clearly on the board, each variable explained in detail, each requirement specified with precision. The master chemist Wallace Wattles has provided complete instructions, demonstrated that the formula works through his own results and the results of countless others who have applied it correctly, and guaranteed that you will certainly get rich if you practice these instructions with the exactness they demand. The question that remains is not whether the formula works. That question has been answered definitively. The question is whether you will work the formula. Most people will read this teaching, find it interesting or inspiring, and then return to their previous patterns of thinking, their habitual relationship with money, their comfortable excuses for why they cannot apply these principles given their particular circumstances. They will continue hoping for wealth while running the mental formula that produces poverty. Continue wishing circumstances would improve while maintaining the consciousness that created current circumstances. Continue believing they want to be rich while refusing to do the mental work required to cause riches to manifest. These people will remain exactly where they are financially, not because the formula failed, but because they never actually ran it. They read about it, thought about it, intended to apply it someday, but never committed to the daily precision that transforms formula from concept into result. But some who encounter this teaching will recognize it for what it is. Not inspiration to make you feel better about poverty, not philosophy to contemplate abstractly, not theory to debate intellectually, but instruction in how to operate a law that produces wealth with scientific certainty when applied with scientific precision. These people will take the formula seriously, will commit to running it correctly regardless of how difficult maintaining all three variables at full intensity proves to be, will audit daily to ensure they are not drifting back into the broken mathematics that produced their previous results. These people will certainly get rich, not because they are special or deserving, but because they applied a formula that works for anyone who applies it correctly. The difference between these two groups is not intelligence, education, starting capital, or favorable circumstances. It is commitment to precision. The first group wants wealth to appear without the demanding discipline of holding clear image, fixed purpose, and unwavering faith consistently. The second group accepts that precision is the price of certainty, that if you want guaranteed results, you must run a guaranteed formula, that mathematical laws respond only to exact application, not to casual attempts. The first group will read this and do nothing differently tomorrow morning. The second group will begin their daily audit tomorrow morning and continue that audit every morning thereafter until wealth manifests as the inevitable result of correct application. So here is the final challenge, the ultimate test of whether you have understood not just intellectually, but existentially what has been taught. Starting tomorrow morning and continuing every morning afterward, you will ask yourself the 3 diagnostic questions. Is my image clear? Is my faith strong? Is my gratitude high? You will answer these questions honestly, not performing the audit mechanically, but genuinely evaluating whether you are running the formula at full intensity or allowing variables to weaken. When you discover a variable has dropped below required intensity, and you will discover this regularly in the beginning, you will stop everything and fix the mixture before proceeding with your day, because you now understand that a broken formula produces nothing, regardless of how much time you invest in running it. This is not a suggestion for something you might try if you feel motivated. This is the instruction in how to operate the law that governs wealth, and the law does not care whether you feel motivated, or whether you find the work difficult, or whether you would prefer an easier path. The law requires precision, or delivers nothing, responds to correct application or produces no result, manifests wealth for those who think in the certain way, or allows poverty to continue for those who think in other ways. There is no third option, no compromise position, no partial application that produces partial results. And to make your commitment concrete, to move this teaching from concept you considered to formula you are running, you will perform one specific action right now. In the comments below this video, you will write these 4 words: I follow the formula. Not I hope to follow the formula, or I'll try to follow the formula, or this sounds interesting, but I follow the formula. Present tense, declarative, a public commitment that you are beginning today to run the certain way with the precision it demands. This small act of written commitment serves a function. It transforms you from passive consumer of content into active practitioner of method, from someone who learned about manifestation into someone who is manifesting, from student of Wattles into apprentice applying his formula. The laboratory is ready. The formula is complete. The guarantee is absolute. All that remains is your decision to begin the experiment, to maintain it with daily precision, and to observe wealth manifest in your life with the same certainty that water manifests when hydrogen meets oxygen. Will you follow the formula? Write it in the comments. I follow the formula. Let the experiment succeed.